This silly looking warm-up got me top 20, and it only takes about 8 to 9 minutes. I'll show you how it's done. Let's do it together. Let's start with eye warm-ups. First, we have the Zig-Zag Tracking scenario. We'll do this only for 30 seconds. Keep your eyes fixed on the circle here and track it when it starts moving. Make sure your gaze is stabilized on it. Think of your eyes like a camera. If the camera is shaky or slow to focus, your pictures, in this case your aim, will be blurry and delayed. Gaze stabilization helps keep your camera steady, switch focus faster, and tracks moving objects smoother. We achieve better target acquisition and smoother tracking, because this exercise trains your brain and eyes to work together more efficiently. And it does that by strengthening the connection between your eye muscles and the part of your brain that controls movement. Next up, we have an eye resting exercise. What I like to do is combine this one with a breathing technique. Make sure to sit down while doing this. If you feel nauseated or dizzy, refrain from doing this exercise. Here's what you're going to do. First, take constant breaths, almost like hyperventilating. Then close your eyes and take a deep breath until your lungs are full. Hold it for 10-15 seconds, then slowly exhale through your mouth. Just follow along, we'll do this once. What we've done here is relax our eye muscles, increased our alertness and focus, and also improved motor skill consolidation. Check out this study on the benefits of post-eye rest, which I'll link in the description. Lastly, we'll do a 30-second blink. I know this might seem silly, but just look at the amount of research on how beneficial this is. We're going to constantly blink for 30 seconds. Blinking helps clear away debris, provides more oxygen to your eyes, and keeps them moisturized, among many other benefits. I know blinking sounds like a given, but when we sit in front of our PCs for longer periods, we tend to forget to do it. The reason I started doing these eye exercises is that when I was grinding to top 20, I became obsessed with refining every tool I needed to perform at my peak. During my research, neuroscientist Andrew Huberman mentioned that reactivity and concentration are directly tied to visual perception. And I noticed that when my eyes were tired, I tend to be able to lock in less, my reactions get slower, so I just put 2 and 2 together. Before I do any active aiming or warming up, I like to start with stretches. The first one we're going to do is a wrist lock rotation. Lock your wrists like this, maintain a tighter grip, then start spinning like this. And we'll do this for 15 seconds. You might hear some cracking, that's completely normal. This exercise mainly improves mobility, improves circulation, and strengthens the wrists and the forearms. Fun fact, Scream also includes this in his warm-up routine. Next up, I like to do a lumbric stretch. We'll do this for 20 seconds, starting with one hand. Curve your fingers like this, and make sure your fingertips are touching your palm or crease. And now just hold it. What I like to do is apply more pressure using my other hand, so I'll just push back like so. You see, most precision aiming we do comes from our fingers. The micro motions that we do, and even clicking reactivity, we tend to utilize mainly our fingers. Once we're done, we'll switch to the other hand and do the same thing for another 20 seconds. This exercise actually strengthens your finger muscles. A lot of people neglect their fingers when stretching, but this helps improve range of motion and also provides pain relief. I've been using a fingertip grip recently, and this has helped me tremendously. This specific exercise is actually recommended by many physiotherapists, both in esports and beyond. And we're done. Now we come to my favorite stretching exercise, the wrist extensor stretch. We'll start by extending our arm, making a slightly tensed fist, and moving it up and down like this for a few seconds. This is just a warm-up before the actual stretch. Now for the exercise, keep your arm extended, make a flat fist, and point it downwards as much as possible, and just hold. You should feel a deep stretch running through your upper wrist and forearm. I like to apply more tension by gently pulling my hand back like this. We'll hold this for 25 seconds. Be careful not to overdo it, you don't want to hurt yourself. I play with a mix of aim styles, and there is this one time I suffered from tennis elbow, which really hurt my aim. And so to fix it, I researched pain relief methods, and I came across this specific exercise. Watch the magic happen. When you let go, you should feel instant relief. Now we move on to the other arm. When you grip a mouse for too long, tiny muscle tears form in your tendons, especially around this area called the Extensor carpi radialis. This exercise helps by loosening overworked muscles, improving blood flow, and reducing tension on the inflamed tendons. It also signals your nervous system to lower pain sensitivity, which helps the body when it's repairing. One of the most common issues to inconsistencies is fatigue, and this exercise fully resets your arm. Now that we're done with the external warm-up, it's time to warm up our aim. Here we have my playlist, which I put together based on my years of experience. This playlist went through a lot of trials and research. Note that there is an easy version of this playlist. Just look up Aim Activator Easy and you should find it. I like to start with horizontal heads. We'll do this for 40 seconds. The goal of this scenario is to improve horizontal stability, something nearly every player struggles with. I found this to be a common issue even amongst pros. Why is this beneficial? Well, think about crosshair placement. Essentially static pre-aim. Core FPS aiming rule is minimizing aim distance, which applies to everything: clearing, pathing, tracing angles, and microflicking. Now notice my technique here. Technique is one of the biggest reasons players struggle to translate aim training into gameplay. You want to be as stable as possible. We'll stay within this line here. We don't want to overflick and correct back. Instead, we want to draw one clean, stable line without pauses or jitters. Let's move on to the next scenario. One thing you'll notice, every scenario we do warms us up for the next one. So we started with a static horizontal scenario, now we have a dynamic horizontal scenario. We'll do this for 60 seconds. Here we want to maintain that stability from the last scenario, but this time we try to apply a bit more control, tracking, and target switching. Technique is really important here. I want to actively aim as much as possible and just like swing my mouse around and apply a bit more tension and get the blood flow going. Now we move on to stretched microflicks. We'll do this for 40 seconds. In this scenario, you're warming up and improving your micro adjustments. In game, this is one of the main aiming skills I rely on. Even if you have really good clearing, a lot of the times when you open up angles, you have to make a micro correction to the head. The crosshair will often be slightly off. You'll find many scenarios like this, but I refined this one a little bit. The targets appear for a short period of time. I have about 180 milliseconds to take my shot, so I have to be really fast. In game, when you make contact with an enemy and your crosshair is off, you don't have the luxury to take your time. The enemy will always punish you. By making the target appear briefly, makes this a reactive microflick scenario. Now we're gonna do boxed microflicks, which is essentially the same scenario, but this time they appear in containers. We'll do this for 60 seconds. You'll have small targets appear at once in a container like so. Once we finish shooting them, they'll appear in a different container. This scenario enforces both micro and mid to long range flicking. I created this scenario with angle switching in mind. For example, think you're playing Valorant and want to push exec A site on ascent. You clear fridge and then want to switch angles to heaven and hold for a peek. I want to warm up that specific motion, hence the containers. Because a flick from fridge to heaven is a mid long range one. So we flick to container and then micro flick to the targets. Next up, we'll do a just track. Now this scenario was inspired by the aiming connoisseur himself, Mari. We'll do this for 50 seconds. The idea behind this scenario is to react to unpredictable movements. Here you really want to practice your first shot accuracy. If you think about gunfights, your first shot often determines the outcome of the fight. And that's a given, we all know that. If you whiff, you either compensate it with a movement so that you avoid getting punished, or you try to do a corrective shot. Now, I'm an adamant believer that while you should work on all the aiming skills you may need for all the different situations, you should target the main issue at hand. People generally opt for what's easy. If I ask you what you would do if you whiff, 9 times out of 10 you would respond with strafing. You wouldn't really say, I need to work on my first shot accuracy and reactivity. You use compensation as a solution. And this is what this exercise is meant for. It's meant for you to work on your first shot accuracy during reactive situations. Now we end our warm-up with Reactive Ramge. This one beautifully combines everything we did so far, but with emphasis on reactivity. We'll do this for 60 seconds. This was actually inspired by my aviation academy. I've studied to become a pilot, and unfortunately I've only completed 2 out of 3 certificates. The way they tested our reaction times in school was actually show us objects and we had to click when a matching one appears. The point was to combat predictions. If you compare this to the human benchmark test, you know where the green screen will appear every time. And you're not really doing any active aiming to react. You're just clicking. Here you can see I'm using different aiming fundamentals. I'm reacting, tracking, micro-correcting, and switching all in one. The last thing I like to do before we wrap up the warm-up is the pull-down stretch. So just put your hands together like this, drag down, and hold for 10 seconds. This is what I used every day to warm up. And this whole gig took us about 11 minutes to get done. See you next time.